Howdy folks, I'm doing this video in English because the topic I'd like to discuss is internationally meant for all people who deal with this kind of information and knowledge, and it has to do with our DNA, our genetic coding. Recently I wrote a paper, and I will do it like this and zoom out. I wrote it on the 12th of July, and it's about mutations and evolution. And as you know, as I pointed out many times over in my YouTube account or channel, is that I do not believe that evolution is a factual process. It doesn't exist. And one of the reasons I pointed out, there are many reasons why. And one of the reasons is, let's look deeper into the processes that should take place if evolution would have been true, and then see that those processes, those suggested processes, do not happen at all, and therefore that mutations can never improve our DNA as is suggested. Okay. As you maybe could have read the title of the paper, is that can our DNA receive new information due to which it changes to better DNA, to introduce or induce evolution, what we know as evolution, that you have bacteria and evolution makes it go to a fish, and that fish evolves to a horse, or to some other organisms like apes, and eventually us humans. In other words, can DNA serve as a radiation antenna, or an antenna in general, to gain new or better information? And I wrote the first paper on the 12th of July, and based on that I improved it in several steps. So this version that I printed out is an improved version of the first version. The thing is, okay, let's analyze what mutations are. Mutations are the change of DNA bases. You've adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. And in RNA you have got uracil. And the thing is, these bases can change, and thus change the information on our DNA. Well, okay, how does that happen? There are only a few processes that can change it. And these changes are induced by radioactive decay, radioactive radiation, alpha, beta, or gamma rays, cosmic radiation from high energetic particles from the universe, UV radiation from our sun, ABC UV, and the most intense UV radiation can alter our DNA. Aggressive chemicals, which is also from outside, influencing our DNA inside. Crossing overs, that is, that if you have two chromosomes, they overlap and then they break, and then suddenly this part sticks with this part, so this part will stick to this part and vice versa. That's a crossing over. But in crossing over, there is DNA information on this part and on this part and on this part. Let's say that this is a gene or a chromosome. It all contains information, but if it crosses over so that this part connects with this part, and in the middle, it breaks down and separate again to have two different, so that, yeah, well, okay, this hand would be on the other side of my arm, etc. But then the information, the amount of information does not change. It's just a relocation of information. So this part goes to that chromosome, and this part goes to the other chromosome. So it's just a relocation. And then have we multiplications of DNA strands, so that it duplicates. But duplication is just copying it, or copying it. So the amount of information does not change. The information is still the same. I mean, if I copy these pages, the information on the pages has not changed. It's only duplicated. Yeah. So, okay. And there is finally, that's another story, viruses induced mutations. Well, viruses automatically contain far less information than for example, a human or a horse, etc. So if a virus inputs his information, it will drag down the total information of that organism, so it doesn't mutate in a positive way. It's not beneficial. You become more like a virus, let me put it that way. And so it doesn't increase your information. You don't gain, the only thing what happens is that you grow sick and you reproduce more viruses to spew them out, like in the corona disease right now. So but the total DNA or RNA stuff that is present on Earth has not changed. The information has not changed. Only mutations of the first 5 categories, so radioactive decay, radioactive radiation, alpha, beta, gamma, cosmic radiation, UV radiation from the sun, and aggressive chemicals, they can really change the information. Okay, but these 5 are external influences. The first, the first 4 are radiation. The 5th is chemical, so from outside a chemical, introducing changes in your body or in the organism's body. But the claim is by evolution that your DNA gains more information, additional information. That means that the information must introduce better information than you already had. That means that you have a sender and a receiver part. So the influence, radiations and aggressive chemicals come from outside and stick to the DNA, suggestively inducing evolution from bacteria to fishes to horses and finally humans. But also dandelions and so on, bacteria to plants and dandelions and fungi, etc., etc., etc. So it is suggested that in this sender and receiver situation there is better information contained, sent from the sender to the receiver, and the receiver is actually our DNA. But the thing is, does that happen? What does it mean that a sender is able to impose better information than there already was? That means that the sender must have knowledge about the receiver. So there must be a detection system going on. Well, hey, the radioactive source must know that our DNA has some level of information which need to be improved. That's the first thing. So there must be a detection system from, hey, that DNA has less information than we have. Yeah. So we must improve the information. But that means that there must be a detection system. The second thing is that not only must be there a detection system, but they must recognize, hey, they need more information than they have already in order to evolve. Yeah. So it must be evaluated. It must be so. Hey, that DNA, that organism has such and so much DNA information, but we think they could do better. So we must evaluate what they extra need, and then that need to be implemented. The second thing is, based on that, a message must be composed. So the radioactive decay, the radioactive radiation or the UV radiation must carry a message in order to make that one better. It okay, and so the medium by which it's sent, the UV radiation, the cosmic radiation, etc., it must be modulated with more additional information in order to make the receiver get more information. Okay. The signal must be sent, so there must be a sender, and the radiation must be sent to the receiver. Then the signal must be able to be received, so the DNA must be able to receive that message, to receive the information, the additional information. The message also must be deciphered, because in sending a message with additional information, the information has to be modulated in the sender, in the signal that you are going to send, in order to be received. But on the other side, our DNA or our organisms, the organism, must also be able to receive it, but also to decipher it. So the message, if there is any, then it also must be deciphered and be implemented, and that's the next step. It must be made active in our DNA. So it must be deciphered and be introduced into the DNA in order to make the DNA to a better DNA with more information, which leads to a better organism. Yeah. Okay? And this all has to happen in exactly the right moment, when an organism is in a stage of reproducing. In other words, if the change takes place here, it will not be carried on to the next generation. No, it must be in my reproductive system. I leave the rest to your own imagination, but you get the point. So there must be several steps in which evolution can take place, and it must all be meet these requirements. And that is the whole thing. In nature, we do not see this kind of systems in organisms in general. There is no receiver, deciphering, etc., implementing system that can change our DNA information level to a higher information level, in order to which organisms evolve to better organisms with better phenotypical expressions or features. That what we do know, and we see this happening all over the time, that in which not organisms but mechanisms exist in sending, but also in receiving information. And I have an example of this. There is an iPhone. It doesn't function right now, but okay. This is able to receive information. In this case, I think it's via 3 or 4G network, to receive information in which it can perform to increase its information level. Programs, an app, you can download apps due to which this mechanism is able to make some calculations, or to do some to watch videos or whatever. So basically what you expect is that in organisms to evolve, they should have the similar mechanisms as do our mobile phones or our smartphones or television sets or radios, or etc. And that you create, and even this video is the same type of example, in which I am composing a message to you via my camera, and I will put that onto YouTube, so that you are the receiver to receive this information. But in order to receive this information, I must detect with you guys that you don't have this information, what I'm just sharing with you. You don't have that. Your knowledge is limited, in my perspective, that you don't know this, that you are not conscious of this message. So I have to compose a message, which I'm doing here, putting a camera in front of me and composing this message Next step is that I have to put it on my computer, and from the computer I have to upload it to YouTube, and you have to click OK, I want to see that video in order to receive this message and to change your mind about things. So that whole process must also be happening if evolution is true, if evolution is supposed to be true. Because the mutations, the changes in the DNA can only be achieved by radioactive decay, it can only be received by UV radiation, cosmic radiation, radioactive stuff, and aggressive chemicals. So that's the whole system of sender and receiver must also be valid if evolution is valid. But, and now comes the clue, what happens if I send a noise in the radio signal? If I send just a random radio signal to my television, I see snow on my television. Yeah. Same here for if I send a noise, then I will receive noise. Yes. And the same happens with the radioactive things and the aggressive chemicals and the UV radiation and so on, cosmic radiation. There is only noise in it. There is no information in these senders, in these radiation sources. There is no signal, there is no message, there is no additional information added so that our DNA can change to a higher information level, which is required for evolution. I mean, it doesn't happen. If you look at the signals, and it's random, it's noise. And what happens, we have our information in our bodies, and whether this body is a human as I am, or a horse, or a fish, or a dandelion, or a broccoli, or roses, it doesn't matter. The thing is, we have to receive information, and if you receive noise, it can only bring the information level that you already have down to the noise level. So that's the only thing that can happen. That's exactly what we see, and that's what we call degeneration of our DNA. So our DNA's information is being destroyed by radioactive decay, cosmic radiation, etc., etc. That's why people get sick. In case if they expose themselves to these 5 influences, these 5 mutative agencies. So if you introduce these 5, that's why we try to avoid them. I mean, don't lay in the sunlight too much, because otherwise you get skin cancer. Don't eat barbecued, the black meat of barbecue, because it contains aggressive chemicals that can mutate you so that you get cancer. Don't swallow aggressive chemicals like petrol. I mean, in that is benzene, and benzene is carcinogenic, stuff like that. So they can mutate, but they never bring you to a higher mutative level. So mutation does not induce evolution, it breaks you down, and that's why people get sick. I am researching now some syndromes right now, and it takes some time because there are a lot of them, and 70%, 70 to 80%, 75% is genetically has a genetically deformation origin. Of all the syndromes that we as humans know, about 70 to 75% is genetically deformation. That means that there is no evolution. It is chemically, physically, statistically impossible that evolution takes place. And if it takes place, then it must meet this requirement of being able to receive the additional information that is being sent from those 5 influences, cosmic radiation, UV, radioactive decay, aggressive chemicals, and what was the other one? The other one, the 5 things that I mentioned. Yeah. So there is a sender-receiver issue, and if you analyze that, then evolution is impossible. It's not possible. We don't have those mechanisms that introduce sender and receiver issues are never being observed in our bodies. Not in our bodies, not in the horses' bodies, not in the dandelions, not in the broccolis, not in the fungi, not in the insects, nowhere. These mechanisms have never been found. That means that you can only introduce noise from all these 5 influences, mutative influences. They carry noise. And thus, the information level that we started out of is being reduced due to the introduction of noise via these 5 mutative agencies. Well, that's the message that I wanted to share. Think about it. This is the message that I send. I'm the sender, you're the receiver, and ponder over it. Think about this. And you can find this article on academia.edu, and you can find it there. The name is "Can Our DNA Receive New Information Due to Which It Changes to Better DNA to Induce Evolution?" In other words, can DNA serve ever as a radiation antenna to gain new/better information? This is the message that I want to share. The DOI document number is 10.13.1.4.0/RG.2.2.361000.04480. You can find it also on ResearchGate, where I also published a first version of this. The message is the same. This is a little bit more improved version of that initial paper. It was published on 12th of July 2021, so two and a half weeks ago. I hope you understand this message. If you have questions, you can ask them. Please stay polite, but we can discuss this subject if you like. Okay, thanks for watching. Hasta la vista. See you next time. Bye bye.